It looks like it's kind of a small group, but I think our hope is to really take this moment, which is kind of a sobering time in my life for sure, where we're just like, what is going on, and begin to use this web series to help people feel a little bit more comfortable and that they're not alone. And so ultimately, we plan on doing this with different topics, and then at the end, we obviously, or all the way through, there'll be Q&A, and then at the end, if people want to just talk about what's going on in their life or questions that maybe don't pertain necessarily to IT or to technology at home and so on, we can kind of cover just about anything. But let's start off though, because I think I just saw in the news today that Sacramento County announced their stay-at-home order, and it's for all non-essential employees, and I guess it's legally enforceable. So the streets are quieter. Today feels quieter than yesterday, and so we are lucky to have Michael Pearson and Jeff Palazzo. These are the heroes of IT. They're Executech, and we want to understand from you what you're seeing out there today. And then go through kind of a series of questions to help us kind of understand how we might navigate this situation. So, Michael or Jeff, you want to kind of lead off, maybe introduce your company and what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, so Executech's about a 200-person firm. We operate in 5 different states. And right now, the biggest thing we're getting from clients is how quickly can they get remote workers with the stay at work or stay at shelter in place and all these other things that are going on. How do we get people to have access? Do they have machines? What sort of capabilities can we provide them, and how quickly can we do that? And that's everything from basic office work to architects, and how's an architect going to work at home with these drawings? And it's been quite a challenge. There's backlogs all over the place, but we're doing what we can. And then Jeff on our cloud practice is really helping to lead that with what applications can we put out there and how quickly can we get people moved.
What are the biggest challenges that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, probably the biggest ones we're seeing right now are people really coming late to the game. They had no preparation. There are people you have never really worked remote, and now all of a sudden they're trying to do this. I got a text Sunday from a university saying, "Hey, how can we get some laptops quickly?" And I had to tell them, "Well, you're late to the game on Sunday. There's a 3-week delay on laptops, and they're just going to have to struggle to figure it out because production's out past April 17th at this point."
And Jeff, you're running the cloud side of things. Most of the people probably are wanting to do this remote stuff in the cloud, I assume. I think we might have you on mute, Jeff. We might have to unmute you there.
My bad. I had some background noise here I didn't want to bother everyone with. So it's interesting. You would think that would be maybe the knee-jerk reaction, Mark, to say, hey, let's go to the cloud. This is our chance. And our response, our team response is, a migration to the cloud takes an assessment. It takes a lot of planning and preparation. And what we're trying to do is really, let's find a stopgap measure that works today, that is secure and makes you productive. And then we'll look later on at making a wholesale move if that's the right thing for the customer. So strangely enough, you're right. A lot of folks think, hey, I should go to the cloud. But what we end up doing is really just giving them access to their work PC from home.
Okay, well, I want to take a minute too, as we've sort of set the stage for today a little bit, talking about technology and in this crisis that we're in. I want to make sure my teammates are represented. This was actually Monique's idea along with Brian Oliver. And so I want to make sure everybody knows Monique Brown, Vice President here at HaneyBiz.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And I just wanted to say we're going to be doing this daily at 2 o'clock. Thank you for Executech for helping us kick this off. We're really grateful to have them here, but we'll be doing a daily webinar series, 2 p.m. every day with different topics around like what resources are available to help entrepreneurs and small businesses during this time, whether it's how-tos like Executech is going to offer us today, or just like access to new information about what's available. During the during the presentation, if you have questions, please just type them in the Q&A, and then we'll make sure that those get surfaced a little later in the conversation. And then, like Mark said, at the end, if you have questions not pertaining to like the tech stuff we're talking about today, feel free to hang on the line, and the HaneyBiz team will be here for a little bit longer. And then I know we have Rick Spencer, who is with us. I don't know, Rick, there you are. So I'm going to have him introduce himself, and he's going to be helping facilitate some of the questions. And we have Brian, who's on chat as well. So if you have anything that you want to offer in comments, Brian's there managing that. And I think that's all I've got. And then, you know, after Rick goes, we'll let Executech jump into their presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Monique. Yeah, so we'll get into Jeff and Michael's presentation. We really appreciate your partnership. Executech has been a long-standing community partner with HaneyBiz and really supportive of our entrepreneurial community. And they were one of the first ones to reach out to us to ask how they could lend their expertise to our community. So we couldn't be more thankful and appreciative of them giving their expertise. So yeah, let's jump right into it, Jeff and Michael, with your presentation, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A.
Yeah. Do you have a presentation, or do you want me to pepper you with questions, Michael or Jeff?
Nope, Monique has the presentation, so we'll put that up, and then we'll do.
Okay, great.
We can certainly ask questions as we go along as well.
Great.
Okay, let's go to. Got it. Can y'all see?
Yep.
Okay. Great.
Whenever. Monique, will I have control, or do you want to forward them for me?
I think I can forward them for you. I actually, yeah, it's on my desk, so.
Perfect.
On my desktop, so I can forward them for you.
Great. So let's go ahead and go to that first bullet point slide. And really, these are kind of the 4 quick topics that we want to be able to talk about today. What are the challenges of working remote? There's corporate challenges around that. Doing business from home is a big one. Talking about security a little bit, and then some tools to get us connected. So the goal is to provide kind of a short presentation and then really let people get into the question and answer and see what kind of questions are out there. So why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide?
Okay, maybe. There we go. Press harder.
So I think one of the biggest challenges, and we spoke with this to this a little bit when Mark asked earlier, is, you know, what's that challenge around being able to do company work at home? And certainly for companies that don't have disaster preparedness or they're not cloud ready, those are big challenges, because we're having to then equip them with some of the basic pieces of, here's how you even start to do this. Whether that's having laptops for staff. Right now, having the right equipment is a big deal. In fact, what we're seeing now are 3-week delays in terms of getting the right equipment. But I think the biggest thing we want to remind people is culture is about people. It's not about a place, right? So our companies are going to be just fine if we put a good culture in there. If the people are remote and we give them the right tools, we can protect that culture and still see the same sort of dynamic results that we would normally get from our companies when we can work remote. So along those lines, when we're talking about how to have culture at home, you know, we want everyone to have flexibility, but at the same time, we're still going to need to expect results from those. And then we've seen some really good communication that has to happen. Leadership has to play a big part of it. Jeff later on will talk about some of the tools that we use. Again, leadership and giving people the way to communicate is really important. At the same time, we don't want our clients to forget their clients. As you're going out and you're having to do this, you have clients you have to support, and you need to make sure that you understand their needs and how you can use these remote working capabilities to support them as well. And again, going back to culture, and culture being about people and making sure we get that right.
Great. It's coming. Maybe. It does not seem to want to advance. There we go.
Hey, Jeff, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So it's really interesting, and I think Michael asked me to take this one because the last 38 years, I've spent about half of those years working out of my home. I'm very fortunate in that I have a room set aside, but some folks are in a situation where, oh, well, their kids are out of school, so both parents are now working at home, plus they have children in the house. So creating a working space at home can be a challenge, but it's important to actually carve out a space, a physical space that you have control of as much as you can. You can't stop the dog from barking, and the kids may be too young to understand the sign on the door. But I have seen some very creative solutions here, including one gentleman who set up his office in his garage. He put his nice car outside in the driveway, put a folding table up, got himself all ready to go. But he had his quiet place with all of his tools. So I think
yeah, I was gonna say, I've enjoyed a little bit of that on some of these Zoom calls and stuff. We really feel like you get to know someone more when you see them in their house in those conditions. You hear the dog barking, it's authentic.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great comment, Mark, and it's funny. It works both ways in that it helps you with your customer, and it also helps you with your own staff. When you think about it, your internal communication, you're used to being in the same room, you're in the conference room together, you're laughing, you're joking, you have your little asides. You're your own little community, and it's no different there. We have to create a working space that is not just your singular space, but your collaboration space, whether that's with customers or if it's with your internal people. So another challenge with business at home is, I know I've got, again, I've got two monitors here plus my laptop monitor. I've got a desk that I can stand up behind. I've got good lighting. I've got everything I would want in a home office. So there's part of that is that laptop. The most important part is that laptop. When you talk about a remote ready environment, the system has to be secure. And that's one of our biggest challenges, which I'm sure Michael's going to speak to some detail about later. But you have to be ready from a remote standpoint. And then there's the network at home. I know that as an IT professional, the first thing I do when I get my new router or access point is I change the admin credentials. I change the router's name. I don't broadcast the access point's name. There's things that we do to lock down the home network. So it's important to look at all aspects of your environment.
Maybe you.
I think I've actually touched on some of this. So finding the space is not always going to be a room. Again, in a scenario where you have multiple parents working at home with children, it might be the dinner table. It might be the garage. It might be a pop-up table in your bedroom. But find a space and block it off as controllable as you can make it. Set the ground rules, which means don't allow your family to run over you. It's too easy. When I first got married, my wife would come into the room and, hey, what are you doing? I'm on a conference call, right? So you have to have ground rules, get everyone to understand them and enforce those. Being flexible really relates to, all right, now that we're all working at home or in a space that's not our normal office space, let's all make allowances for each other to have a little bit of a, cut some people some slack. If you hear the dog bark, don't let that reflect on that person's professionalism. It's nothing that they can control. So be flexible. I work around some of my known issues there. So for instance, tomorrow I've got another presentation, and I had to push it to 10 o'clock because I know that about 9 o'clock, the guys are going to be out front there doing the mow and blow. And my office is right here in my front yard. So I plan around those things. So it's some things you can. I actually can turn my doorbell off. So when Amazon comes to drop a package, that doesn't annoy us.
I was talking to a guy from our office, Ian DeWert. He's one of our vice presidents. He's in charge of all our investments. And he's been working from home this last week or so. He said he's more productive. I mean, are you finding that people are a little more productive? It's because they don't have that day-to-day water cooler kind of communication.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, Mark, because if you look at the next bullet here is set standard work hours. So when we talked about being productive, my biggest issue when I first came home to work was that I lost track of time. Some days I would sit down, check email as I rolled out of bed. I'm here in my jammies at 7 a.m. and I'm looking at things, and before I know it, it's lunchtime. I haven't showered yet. Or the opposite end of the spectrum. You get to the end of the day, and there is no end of day because you don't have a commute. You don't turn out the lights and go somewhere unless you make that part of your ritual at home. So there has to be, you're very productive, maybe more productive, at least for me, than it is being in the office with all the distractions. For me, it's easier to work at home. I'm more productive. People need some things for that. For instance, maybe you need some background noise. You need some white noise to simulate being in the office. You can also set, say, hey, Alexa, set an alarm for 90 minutes from now. So you remember to get up and move around because you don't have the normal office distractions to help with that. So yeah, you are more productive. And to go along with that, Mark, when you talk about, having that routine, dress the part of it and take breaks here. It's all part of going to work. You have to have the mindset. Now I'm very good about it. I have my morning routine includes commuting, which is the 30-foot walk from the bedroom. I come in here with my coffee, I close the door, and I am at work. My wife understands that. And that helps me with the workspace and to be productive.
And if you, while you're on that commute too, you can listen to the Mark Haney Show. It's a pretty good podcast.
There you go.
Oh, the problem with that is, I don't listen to anything that I find interesting because then it reduces my productivity. I'm here already.
Yeah. I think on this one, I think the big thing too is as we're looking at the home office and we've moved to that next slide is corporate security has to apply, right? So when we have these remote systems, especially if you're now asking your staff, hey, could you use your home computer because we didn't have a computer capable for you, making sure that not only are we providing secure access through a VPN, but that we have set security standards that even if someone's using their home machine, we're still saying great, but it has to have antivirus. It has to have anti-malware. We can't use generic passwords. Even on your Wi-Fi, we can't use generic passwords. And that's going to keep your IT team busy, or your IT provider, we're a managed service provider, keep us busy and vigilant to make sure that we're then keeping track of all these security things, because most home networks aren't corporate secure, but we need to make them that way if we're going to ask people to work remote.
Can you touch on real quick what a VPN is and maybe why is that important, or how is that?
Yeah, so most companies, or if not all of them, should have a VPN, a virtual private network, and that's the way to access the corporate data and corporate systems remotely in a secure fashion. So we shouldn't be able to just access them via the web or access them from a public site. We should have to have a secure protocol we go through that says, I'm authenticated, I'm part of that company, I'm allowed to see that data. If you're accessing it any other way than that, you're putting yourself in jeopardy, which isn't a great place to be. We don't want to add a compromise on top of this. And right now, there's a whole bunch of these phishing things going out, and the bad guys are trying to hit us while we're down, and we have to make sure we're extra diligent to keep ourselves secure and protected. So in terms of the virtual world, when Jeff and I were talking about this, the great news is there's plenty of resources out there for working at home and working at remote. And it's really going to come down to tool selection. From a corporate standpoint, what tools do you want to use, getting your staff to buy into those tools, and then maximizing the benefit from them, so that way we're all using the same tools. We're big Microsoft Teams guys. We use it for video. We use it for instant messaging. We share files. We put group channels in there. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but that really is a huge tool for us, and we're doing everything we can to maximize it. I think the thing that you'll find with some of these companies is as you start using these tools and you realize how great they are, and it's that cloud now, they're going to realize, you know what, we may as well use it later. Why ever go back? Now that we have this and we see this capability, why are we going back? and then how do we move the rest of our stuff there? So I think that's another big piece of it. Jeff, you want to talk about the tools a little bit?
Yeah, so it's good. Thanks, Michael. You talked about teams being kind of key for us. So it's really interesting, the social aspect of going to work at home. You miss people. You miss being around people. We're all going to be stir crazy here in a week or two, right? And one of the things that Teams gives you is the ability to be kind of present with your coworkers and your customers. You're able, especially in-house, where you're working side by side with people every day and suddenly you're not there or they're not there. You want to maintain that relationship and that productivity that you get through collaboration. Teams does that with chats and meetings primarily, and also allows you to be even more, because we use Teams at work, the change hasn't been that different for us when we moved away, especially if we've got the video thing going on. So Teams is very important.
How would you contrast that to Zoom? Is it similar?
No, Zoom is specific to video conferencing.
Okay.
Teams is a much larger superset. So for instance, we could be in a conference like this and I could be saving files through the same interface or pulling up files very easily that are related. So they're all together because of Teams. So Teams
is there something, an affordable version? Let's say it's somebody that's, what's everybody using? Is Teams the most common, or what tool is maybe the most common out there right now?
Well, for this breadth of product, I think Teams is probably the number one. And I think we have, and folks can get it when you talk about Teams, you can get it a couple different ways. One is you can get a free trial if you're not sure yet. So we talked about, earlier we talked about, you asked about, is everyone going to cloud? And I was thinking about servers. But here we're talking about cloud in terms of collaboration and absolutely using the cloud for that. I'm sorry if I went down the wrong path there. So when we look at Teams for collaboration, we can either get you already have it if you have several different versions of Office 365 or Microsoft 365, which is a similar product, or you can get a trial and you could either set it up yourselves or get an IT professional to set that up for you and get a feel for it and see if it fits your business.
And Jeff, that trial for Microsoft is set at 6 months for free. Do I have that right?
It's 6 months for free. Is the full Microsoft Office E1 license. So you actually get a lot of other things along with it, which is important. And I'll tell you why. Teams is just one aspect of Office. It's just one thing of it as a module. Mm-hmm. And there are other modules that it interfaces with. The one way that we use it is we use another application called Planner. And Planner comes with Office 365. You're able to take Planner and set up, like, if you think of the way you might have used a project management software, but project management software is too intricate and it's overkill for what you need, Planner is the perfect thing.
Okay.
Well, inside of Teams, I have a plan. That plan knows everyone in my team. We keep our chats associated with that plan with the plan. So you can see where it's different from Zoom, is that you're really starting to coalesce as a team and take files and plans and chats and keep them all in one place that you can refer to. And you could also secure it so that only the people working on that project, for instance, get access.
Gotcha.
Other tools for remote users, I'll go through this quickly. One is you absolutely need to test all your gear. For instance, we have, in my case, I have a 8-year-old HD video cam that I had to make sure worked with Teams, right? I want to make sure that my microphone is set up. I wanted to, the other day I was speaking like I am to you now, and there was some background noise. I knew that I could reduce that by plugging in a headset. So I put a headset on. So there are things that you want to make sure that you're set and ready to go, as well as obviously your networking gear. Your status is important. Now, this is also another Teams thing that you don't have with Zoom, which is kind of an on-demand conference, right? So we look at each other when we're at the office. We look across the room and go, oh yeah, Fred doesn't have, he isn't on the phone. I can bug him about blah, blah, blah. Here, you can set your status. Now, there's just a little light. If anyone's used some of the other IM solutions before, you know what I'm talking about. You've got a green or a yellow or a red dot next to your name. Well, this goes beyond that as well. I can set up a status, and this is what I often do. Like for now, I knew I was going to be here. I set up a status that knocked off, it showed red while I'm here, but I also put a status line in that says, presenting on a video conference until 3 p.m. And then with direction, leave me a text if it's important. So there's things that you could do to be part of the culture still, to keep that together, to keep that lines of communication open. Within Teams, you can also use the @ when you're in a chat stream. Maybe you sent it's a group chat with 7 people on it, and you sent out some direction, and 4 of the people got back to you. Well, did the others get the message? Did they respond to the message? Well, what happened? So you can take the @ sign and go, Michael Pearson, were you able to do this? And this way it calls him out. He can be notified by email. Maybe that's what he's looking at. He's living in his Outlook. Maybe he would see that and go, oh, I didn't see my IM. So there's ways, again, to keep people connected. And little things like that really end up being very important. We'd also put things into channels. So a channel could be, it's a logical construct that says, all right, I'm going to create a channel for a project, or I'm going to create a channel for a department, or I'm going to create a channel for an event. So anything that you want to bring resources together, whether those are chats or IMs or emails or files or plans, you can put those all in one channel. So that's the glue that keeps things together. Okay. And then the data is all in the cloud. So this is all much easier to manage than trying to manage through email, I'll tell you. For us, I have changed. I never thought I'd see the day where I took my nose out of Outlook, but I don't care so much about Outlook. I keep an eye on it in the tray to see if I've got some messages, but I live in Teams now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So Q&A. So maybe I'll start off with a couple of basic questions, but I think we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to sort of chime in. I know Rick's got some thoughts, but some of this is about managing people, right? If you're a manager, are there certain things we need to think about as we approach, say you're in one of these teams, but you're the lead. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think leadership is real critical here. I think one of the things I've really focused on is making sure that we have good groups within the tools that we use so that we can communicate. I'm checking in with staff more frequently, at least a quick instant message or something that says, hey, how is it going? What do you need from me to help you be successful while you're working from home? And it's just making sure that we understand and are sensitive to what's going on with others. Again, I think from a culture standpoint, we need to allow flexibility. At the same time, we're not necessarily changing results. We still have to get work done. People still want to work right now with, a lot of the jobs where you can't work remote. They're wishing they could work. So we're wanting to make sure that our people are being successful and remotely. And again, I think that just comes from a leadership standpoint. How do we lead? How do we guide? And how are we there for them?
One of the questions that came up I have down here is, is there a guide or certain steps for keeping your home network secure? Are there certain do's and don'ts?
Yeah, so we have a whole worksheet that we go through with our clients. If they're going to have people working remote, we give them out a worksheet that just walks through those things. And some of it's very basic. If you're using Wi-Fi at home, did you change the Wi-Fi password that your piece of equipment came with, or is it the standard user setup? Are you using antivirus? Do you have a VPN at home? Did you change the router username and password when it first came to you? And in some cases, people don't even realize they were supposed to change those things. So literally, it's kind of like, okay, I could get onto your home network by typing admin password admin. We don't want people to be in those situations because now they're connected into a corporate network. So we have a whole checklist that we go through for both home machines and home networks.
Okay. Well, thinking about somebody who's got bad Wi-Fi, Monique this morning, Wi-Fi was a little spotty, so she ended up coming into the office, and so here she is. But are there certain things that tools for somebody who's maybe on a Wi-Fi that's not as strong?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges here is that that's something that it's kind of too late to control in most cases, right? People have what they have. I think the other challenge we had is that several areas of Sac County were already experiencing internet outages earlier this week. So for those of us that had kids at home working as well, all of a sudden you can't get to work networks, you can't get to school networks. So it's just trying to figure out, how do we work through those outages? Are you suddenly then having to use your cellular phone and a cellular Wi-Fi as a backup? We have to just think through all those pieces and be as prepared as possible. But the reality is, if you have slow internet at home, at this point, it's pretty late. We're just coping with it unless you can somehow speed it up.
Is there any place we can go that's, I mean, because Starbucks, you can't go to Starbucks right now. Is there any place that's
No, it's kind of funny. And well, with the new, we had some staff coming into the offices because nobody was there. So you could have a whole office, a whole workspace to yourself. But now with the new shelter in place order and people from home, most people are going to be at home. And then, hopefully if all else fails, you have your cellular network and you're setting up your iPhone or whatever else it is as a hotspot, and you can use that to get data.
Ryan just threw up a question here. So learning a new software, it can take a long time. What's the best or fastest way to kind of steepen that learning curve?
So in terms of using the software, Mark?
Yeah, like he said, Teams, if we want to do that, but we want to use it now, how do you suggest a team get trained on it quickly?
Yeah, so that reaches right into something Jeff has going on. So I think Jeff is going to be talking about that tomorrow. So we're doing a webinar tomorrow, Jeff, on how to use Teams. So Jeff could probably speak to that a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a great question. Everyone's learning curve is different and everyone learns differently. What we are doing are a combination of things. One is we'll have weekly webinars for teams, because it's just, there's new people coming every week now, or really every day they're coming online with work from home. There is a fantastic, there's a treasure trove of information available on Microsoft's site in case of Teams. Now, it doesn't apply to every software package that someone may need, but in the case of Teams, there's they have a great suite of YouTube type videos, and it's just in time learning. So how do I do X? If you look down this list, and there it is, how to do X, and it's a 2-minute video. Now, what it doesn't help you with necessarily is envisioning how to use, where you would use it, how you would use it. It's like how to is done very well there. So I know that we are doing it, but there's millions of resources that if you're ready to do some self-help, you can do that. We also will do one-on-one training for customers who want that.
What about are there pros and cons? I can think of a lot of cons of using your own device, right? So you're trying to save some money and let Monique work off her personal device, and really I've got sensitive information that could be on her personal laptop or something. I mean, is there certain advice or protocol that you advise companies to take into consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. And right now what we're doing is we're working with clients to say, look, those machines at least have to have some sort of antivirus. We should double check to make sure they're patched. So they should work with their IT team to make sure, is that machine patched? Does it have antivirus, anti-malware? And then also talking with the staff person to say, by the way, don't save data on that local home machine. We still need to save it across the network onto the corporate machines where it's getting backed up, because the last thing we want to do is lose data just because someone's working from home. We need to find some tool to share it. Teams for us, again, that's what we use because we can share files and work together right in there, but you've got to protect the data and know where it's at.
What industries are really not set up, or it's going to be difficult to be compliant by setting up work from home? Are there problems with banking or medical or other areas where it's like, it's just not practical? And are there some that it's like, it's perfect?
Yeah, some of them it's not going to be practical, or it's just not going to be capable. Obviously, when we look at restaurants, when we look at banking, we look at some of these areas, and it's just not practical to work from home. In other cases, it's possible but complicated. Our architecture clients who are now working from home and dealing with large-scale three-dimensional CAD drawings, we need to make sure they have the capability to still do that work remotely. And that's not necessarily the easiest thing. We got to have good bandwidth. We have to make sure that we're giving them the horsepower they need, and then the proper software licensing. So in some cases, it's possible, but it's a little more complicated in terms of how you have to roll that out.
Rick, do you have any other questions, or maybe we can facilitate any other questions from our audience regarding IT, and then let everybody sort of have a chance to make sure we exhaust fully the technology piece, and then maybe we can leave a few minutes so that we can just talk about life as we know it in this new reality.
Yeah, so there was a great question that came through about time tracking, and being that some people may not be using a clock at the office, but it's kind of visual time tracking. They're at their desk, that they're working. And I was just reading some articles about some of the kind of draconian standards that some of these new managers are asking people to do, like leave their webcam on all day, and to try to monitor people. So what are you seeing with clients as far as time tracking and changing that mindset for managers?
So I think there's two key pieces here, right? Is a lot of the current software that's out there, if you're using an ADP or someone like that, most of those have mobile apps so that you can clock in, clock out, and that can happen mobily. I think something Jeff pointed to earlier, though, is from a status standpoint, you don't need to leave your camera on all day so someone's watching your house. We have a status that says it's green, yellow, red. If I'm on a call, it's red. I'm in this presentation, it's red. If I'm available, it's green. And then primarily it's instant managing. At the end of the day, we have to trust our staff, make sure that our corporate culture is such that we can count on them being productive and getting the job done without someone hovering over them. I guess if it was me, if I thought, gosh, I'm going to really have to hover over the staff person, frankly, I'm going to be asking the question why they're working for me in the first place, right? That's a more complicated issue.
Right. Great. What do you see, Jeff, going back to teams a little bit, it can be easy to look at these as one-on-one cases. People have different experience with technology, different experience with software. But where do you see great use cases of building a knowledge base so that you're not, sending singular emails or even posting singular thoughts, but people can learn together as an enterprise?
Great question, Rick. So I think something that's important when you set up work from home is that you get a couple of champions within the organization. You find some folks who are love technology, right? And B, are respected by the others in the organization, the folks that they work with. So they end up promoting the learning of the software. So it's important, I think, to have that. But are you looking for something more specific to?
No, I love the idea of champions. I think that's a great suggestion. I'm just thinking also too about using teams, and when you say, look, this is just one individual chat because it seems like a one-on-one situation versus, hey, this is an article or this is content that I should be sharing across the enterprise or make accessible for searching for people that have this question in the future.
Okay. So you can build a knowledge base using SharePoint, which is part of Office 365. I think that's more of a project than it is, just using it to set it up properly. But what I would point out is when you use Teams, it's really interesting. When you start aligning, again, it could be a department channel or team. It could be a a project, some logical construct. Everything that you need to save for that, and if you want to talk about a knowledge base, stays within that team and it's found in one place. The other part of it is there are tools within teams to search for specific things. So even though it's not as clean and cool as a knowledge base that's set up properly, that where everything is keyed a million different ways and very quick searches, you're still going to be able to get the end result that you're looking for. So it's a great question, and there are tools there. You just need to get in the habit of using Teams, because then everything will be there. If you force yourself to do old ways and I'm going to map a drive and I'm going to save it over there, I don't care what Teams is trying to do, you're fighting upstream, it can cause a problem.
Great.
Michael, you and I have talked about outsourcing in general and sort of this trend that's moving that way, so that you don't have to have an IT person with all the certifications on hand. You basically maybe have a champion or somebody who's solid around the office, but then you can use companies like yourself. We do that for accountants, right? We have outsourced bookkeeping, so they might have a office manager, but not an accountant. So you still feel like that trend is there, and maybe even in this economic climate, it might even be accelerating.
Yeah, and we expect it to continue to accelerate, especially after a time like this, because I think it's cost effective. You have this broad knowledge base. A lot of these clients suddenly needed a tremendous amount of help in order to do this, and where we could throw 3-4 people at it, had they just had one guy, they may not have been able to pull that off. So I think understanding that you can have this agile IT workforce that can grow with you, it can be very dynamic, that's just going to continue. They'll continue to see outsourcing IT, and I don't expect that to change anytime in the near future. And in fact, I'm sure it's going to continue to accelerate, especially as cloud learning and cloud capabilities become more and more prevalent.
Any other questions from our audience, Rick, or should we kind of go to some closing thoughts?
There's one question I want to follow up on that one,
Yeah.
because I know Executech has done a great job talking about IT support and identification of tools and systems. I know you guys do a lot of project management as well, and I think about app overload. It's easy to get overloaded with lots of different apps in a business, especially when people are working from home and they have more independence, and so they're kind of rogue. And someone found an app for this, and someone found an app for that, and now you've got 5 different apps that are doing the same thing, and no one's synced up. So, can you guys tell me a little bit about your approach in solving for that, and some of the project management tools and methodologies you're using to especially with remote workforces, keep things cohesive?
Yeah, and we're very much a Microsoft-centric shop as it relates to that, with regards to Azure, Office 365, Microsoft Teams, and you're right. You could have someone out there saying, I want to use Zoom, I want to use Slack, I want to use Teams, and then you have data all over the place. So I think that's one of the things we talked about in the presentation that's real important, is pick your tools and then really ask your team to become as knowledgeable as possible within that tool set, so that they can help you guys maximize benefit. And I think that just has to be really good corporate leadership that guides that, and then corralling people as they start to go outside of it, or if they express a need that's not met, really understand what is that need, and if the tool is lacking, well, then let's get something that everyone can participate in, so that we just don't have people running rogue. And that's probably the biggest thing.
And we can scan to see if those third-party apps are installed on laptops, and so we can help take care of that shadow IT problem.
That's all the audience questions, Mark. So
Okay, great. Well, maybe we could ask Jeff and Michael to kind of share some closing thoughts, anything that we didn't cover, and then maybe we can, if the audience desires, we can have an overarching question about just where we're at. If there's anybody that wants to, if anybody's got a good story or anything stressful they want to talk about, we can do that. And then we can talk about what's going to happen for the next couple of weeks with us as well. So maybe Jeff and Michael, maybe some closing thoughts about how we might approach this crazy time that we're in.
Hey, Michael, why don't you tell the story about our customer, a very large customer, who last week wanted to move 30 some odd folks to home like the next day if they could, and kind of how we went about that as a project. It's kind of a case study, Mark. I think it'd be interesting just to hear how a real world opportunity got taken care of.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to see this, right? I think we're really, 2-4 weeks of this. It's going to be going on. We had a client, they wanted to send 35 of their staff home, get them working from home. And our team did a great job of stepping up, making sure that, do they have the right machines? How do we get their machines? If it's going to be home for 4 weeks, maybe we send them home with their desktop, goodness sakes, and get that set up. And our team really rallied around that. Again, it was much more than a single person IT situation. We ended up having probably 5 or 6 people involved in that project, making sure everyone could work and communicate, and just got great feedback from the president of that company, and the CFO saying, how great it was to have their team so prepared and ready to go. And again, they were already ready to go early this week. We expect we'll continue to get calls from clients asking, what can they do? And especially with the shelter in place, what can we do to help them out? So it's putting our team out in terms of needing to still be out there, but whatever we could do to help out, we're interested and want to make sure we're accommodating for people.
A little behind the scenes on that, I thought it was interesting is that we probably solved the challenge like 4 different ways across those 35 people. So it wasn't like we had a cookie cutter approach that works for everyone. The real world is that not every situation is the same. So it was, that's what makes it fun, is we get to get a little bit creative in solving issues.
I can envision the IT manager in a company, his or her stress level is probably low because they're used to dealing with difficult technology and stuff. But a business owner, when you're talking to business owners now, what's the mood? Is it high stress? Is it frantic? Is it?
Yeah, in some cases it's pretty significant amount of stress, right? And if you look at it with some of these businesses, can you go a week without revenue? Can you go a month without revenue? What if your revenue is cut in half because you can't have people out there? And those are very real problems. And so certainly encouraging everyone, I don't care if it's your local, Chinese food takeout place, whatever, support your local businesses as best you can. Realize you want them there long-term. They want to be there long-term. And we want to help them accommodate that however we can. And, support your local businesses. That's big in my forefront of my mind right now.
Well said, Michael. Anybody else in the audience want to speak to any other issue regarding small business or entrepreneurship, or just where we're at today? If anybody feels the need to kind of jump in and say a few words.
I am moving everybody to allow to talk, and if you just raise your hand, there's a little hand raising button, we can call on you so not everybody talks over each other. Damon, go ahead. Oh.
Damon, you're muted.
Oh.
Yep, if you unmute, I
got it. I figured it out. I'm only kind of a technologist. So the biggest thing for me from an entrepreneurial perspective on this is I had someone actually post this, is it's interesting to be in between this idea of underreacting and feeling like you're overreacting at the same time. Like living in that all the time is really surreal. And that's an interesting thing from a business perspective, because, as having partners that are like, this is going to go away. This is dumb. And then me personally, I was like, we all got to go home. Science says we got to go home. We must go home, and that was kind of the, the approach of talking to business owners and going in between all of this. That was the hard thing for us. And on top of that, dealing with the technology and dealing with customers and IT and all of that, and having to traverse that appropriately was a challenge. But in the end, I think that now we're here, we're set at home. Everybody feels like it's the right thing, and it's starting to be that settle point. It's interesting to see how we come out of this. I think that being a spectator and being part of the actor is going to be interesting.
It's interesting, Damon. You've got teammates and a company that's probably has built-in clientele and some things like that. I've talked to other people that businesses have been cut in half or worse. And the mentality that I've heard mentioned, and I've tried to embrace this because I lived through 2008, and it was pretty brutal. It's kind of like this is a time where a lot of us sort of have to put our war general hat on. We're going into battle, and we don't know how long it's going to be, but somehow we have to be that kind of leader. Some of us are more of the group hug kind of leader. Some of us might be a little more, high energy, but whoever you are, when it comes to game on and must-win scenarios, this is who we need to be, not only for our teammates at work, but for our friends. A lot of us that are business owners are sort of in this other leadership area category in a lot of people's minds. And then we go home and we have to be that person for our family, and to keep that stiff upper lip, or whatever you want to call it, keep your chin up high and not be the one breaking down. And I cried this morning in front of my assistant, but it wasn't sadness. It was a tea of happiness. But like the real humanity of this thing is coming out for a lot of people.
Yeah, Mark, I think one of the things that's important for us to remember is, September 11th, the millennials were very young. The housing crisis in 2008, they weren't really buying houses. So this is the first adult millennial crisis. So we really, for those of us that have been through a few, we need to really be there for them and guide them and give strong leadership so that they understand that this too will pass. Here's how you get through it effectively. Your world's not going to end.
Well said. Anybody else in the audience want to bring up a topic or share something? We have quiet people in the audience. Well, hey, we really appreciate everybody coming on. Monique, you want to share what you see happening for the next week or so, unless we have somebody else stepping up that wants to say something?
Nope.
No? Okay. And you can you kind of take us home?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much again, Executech, Jeff and Michael, for joining us today. I thought that was super valuable information and very helpful to have some just like concrete next steps or things to think about as we transition, many of us, to a remote workforce for at least the next couple of weeks. We're going to be, like I said earlier, we're going to be here every day at 2. We'll be tackling a different topic daily. You can find that schedule on our website, and you register once for the series and you should be able to get into all of them. But we will also be posting this online after the fact if you want to share it with other people in your community. And we'll always leave time at the end just for people to share how they're doing and, ask questions about stuff that maybe doesn't pertain directly to the topic, but just, how do you get through each day and manage a business, keep your chin up, help other people and the like. So I think that's all we've got for now, unless Rick has anything additional to say. But I just thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.